Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Space Jams podcast. I am your wonderful host, Jim Murphy, and today we have a very special guest, Jennifer Maxwell from JPL, the Project Systems Engineer for the Psyche mission, mother of three children and three cats. Wonderful to have you here, Jennifer. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Just one minor correction. I am only the deputy project systems engineer,
Oh, I'm sorry.
which
I just thought so
alleviates
highly of you.
a lot of the hard decisions that the actual project systems engineer has to make.
I just think so highly of you already that
Thank
I would
you.
have promoted you there anyway.
Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome to talk to my bosses.
I will. Now, Jennifer, I've been excited about this interview for I think it's almost a month now. It's very exciting that we finally get to speak with you. And as you have already corrected me so wonderfully, because I am a wonderful host, but still need plenty of correction, I want to ask you a little bit about your job as a deputy project system engineer of the Psyche mission. You want to tell us a little about it?
Sure. So one of the things about aerospace missions is that they are a system of systems. And so there are, smaller systems that are focused around just the flight computer or maybe one of the science instruments. And then there's the larger system, which is really how the entire spacecraft works together. And so I'm kind of in that larger realm. And we have spacecrafts are usually divided up into the flight system, which is the part of the spacecraft that actually gets us into space or gets us through space to whatever destination we're going. We have the mission system, which is all about the people and the processes and the tools that we use on the ground to control the spacecraft. And then we have the payload system, which is really all about the science instruments. And so the project system sits kind of above all three of those realms, and tries to make sure that somebody is really holding together all three of the work that those people are doing to be able to create a coherent mission. And so, I think a lot of people don't really understand what systems engineering is, especially if they're younger and still in school. It's really hard to understand what does a systems engineer do. And systems engineering is really about interfaces and making sure that you're designing across the boundaries correctly, and that you're really taking into account how two different components or multiple different components are going to work. And so, at the project system level, there are larger interfaces like the flight software that is controlling the payloads and the, command dictionary that the ground uses, but that then also has to execute properly on the flight computer. And so project systems engineers, really try to make sure a lot of that holds together and functions well. My day-to-day is a lot of interfacing with JPL as a whole. The other role that we have is to make sure that that we follow all of JPL's best practices in the work that we do on the Psyche mission. And so there's a lot of oversight of that, as well as engineering, and kind of overseeing the flight system, mission system, and payload system to make sure that we're going to have a great spacecraft when we're done building it.
That's awesome. So it seems like you kind of talked about like three different subsystems that the project systems engineers kind of overlook. Is that for every single mission, or is the project system always there and they kind of help out with every mission, or are they specific to one mission at a time?
Most of the time it's specific to just one mission. Usually one mission is complex enough. No one human being can even understand all of the details of one mission, because it just takes so much to be able to operate in the space environment. And so, so we work just focused on our one mission, but just about every mission has a project systems engineer or equivalent kind of systems engineer sitting there kind of at the top level, overseeing how everything's coming together.
That's cool. And so we just had Perseverance land, I think it was 2 weeks now.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a JPL mission as well. So did that have all the same characteristics of your Psyche mission that's going on?
The organizational structure was a little bit different. I think, the Mars missions are even more complex because you basically have three different spacecrafts that you're designing, right? You have the cruise stage, which gets you to Mars, and the descent stage, which gets you through the atmosphere, and then the rover itself, which then does a whole other mission basically on the surface of Mars. And so those are organized a little bit differently in that we kind of have these subdomains across the flight system and the payload system, just to, I think, divide the work up into more digestible chunks. Mars missions are, like I said, extremely, extremely complex, and so they break it down a little bit more. But there still is what they call an integrated systems engineer that basically is the equivalent of the project systems engineer.
Well, that's pretty cool. Were you able to see the Perseverance land and everything? I mean, I guess the live version was kind of that simulation, but I thought it was still spectacular. And it was really cool.
Yeah,
All the JPL people like cheer and everything.
yeah, it was definitely awesome. It was my second Mars landing that I've had a role in. And so it was a little bit different for me this time. My first one was Curiosity back in 2012, and I was, in one of the control rooms there, and that was a very personal experience for me, to be able to, you know that I had just worked as hard as I'd ever worked in my whole life, and it actually turned out well. That it really worked. It was unfortunately a surprise, but a great surprise, because when we test things, there's so many complex things that happen in the test environment that it never executes as perfectly as it does on Mars. So that's great. But Perseverance was my second Mars landing, and I had already transitioned onto the Psyche project by then. So it was a little bit kind of outside. I wasn't in a control room this time. But I was actually able to share the landing with my family, which was very special because usually, the family goes to Caltech and then the people working at JPL or JPL. So it was nice to experience it with them. But it was a little bit of sensory overload. I had two different Zooms going with two different teams that I was, working with, and JPL had a JPL wide Zoom going on. And then I was watching NASA TV in the control room. The biggest thing that I noticed is that I had a time delay in my internet. So I was watching with one team, and somebody had the animation that was fed from the telemetry up, and so I saw it land, and we were all like, "Okay, does that mean it's good?" But I had like a 2-minute delay waiting for the control room that was on NASA TV to actually declare that the landing was good. So that was kind of a weird COVID thing that hopefully I don't have to experience again. But it was still very exciting. And, getting to watch my kids' faces as they're sharing the same experience with their class, and knowing that, I was able to contribute to that mission was pretty awesome for them and pretty awesome for me to see as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think especially like for your kids, like I always date back. I think my love for space comes from seeing the shuttle launch. I'm not even certain which shuttle it was. I've tried to figure out which day it was, but it was so long ago and I was a kid and I can't really remember. But
Mhm.
seeing that shuttle launch, seeing Curiosity or Perseverance land on Mars, like knowing it's there, like that's the very cool thing that can inspire some great stuff. Having
Yeah.
a mom who's also involved in it, I'm sure helps too. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's nice when my kids will admit they're proud of me.
nice. I gotta ask. So when I was watching Perseverance, I know we're kind of sticking on Perseverance, but since you were in the Curiosity, when you were in the room, like
Mhm.
how is that energy? Because when you're watching them, uh, like from the outside, people are like some people seem like a little nervously charged, like waiting for things to happen because there's that little bit of delay. Like you've been in the room, that's really cool. Like what were your emotions when you were in there? What were you thinking about the whole time?
Oh man. It was crazy. So I I kind of alluded to the experience that we had in building Curiosity. And, it was kind of 24/7 crazy testing for multiple years. It was really, really exhausting. Like I got into a habit of just, working from 3 to 5 in the morning sometimes and those types of things. So it was exhausting personal work. And then when we got closer to landing, I didn't have anything to do with the actual entry, descent, and landing sequence very much. But when we got into the room and, as I was starting to tell some of my friends, I'm like, okay, this is the landing system. This is how the sky crane works. So we're just going to go through the atmosphere and then a parachute's going to come out and then, it's going to break away and then it's going to slowly lower the rover down to the ground and then it's going to fly away and crash somewhere else. Like when you say that in English to like somebody not involved in engineering, it's scary. It just sounds like we've lost our minds. And so, a lot of that kind of started to set in as we got closer. I'm like, wow, this is really insane. And obviously this was the first demonstration of the sky crane technology. So I was really nervous. And, when we're in there, we're all kind of in it together. And we knew we weren't the ones on camera. There were cameras around, but they weren't going to show the surface operations until later that night because it was all about the entry, descent, and landing. And so, we're all just kind of looking at each other and, nervously waiting. And then, as it's working, everybody's cheering and you're like, okay, is this actually going to work? And then you hear touchdown confirmed. And I mean, it was all the emotions that you saw in the other room. It was tears, it was hugs, it was disbelief that we actually pulled it off. It was relief for all the hard work that we had done over the years. It was all of that. And it was incredible. And I tell a lot of students that I talk with, it was incredible for me just from the pure accomplishment, right? From, hey, I was part of this engineering team that did this amazing thing. But then when we started to see the videos of other people watching the landing and of Times Square and all of that, still to this day, when I watch that, I tear up and cry because here I am, lucky enough to pull off something incredible for myself. And now I'm seeing that not only is that incredible for myself, but that's incredible for humanity. And I had a part in that. I mean, it's everything I ever dreamed of wanting to do with my life. And so it really was a dream come true.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I was watching with my mother for the first minutes, and we both kind of like teared up. We were like, you know what? I have nothing to do with this, but like watching all these people working together, and they're so happy that it happened and they made it. It's like beautiful. It's like a choir singing, or just watching people come together and make stuff happen is awesome, and that's what space is all about. So
Yeah.
now, so you worked on Curiosity, and now you have a new job. You've worn a lot of hats at JPL. Like I've been looking through your LinkedIn, and there's like a bunch of different things you've been doing. So, like, do you have a favorite job? Did you have like a favorite role you played, or are they all different and nice in the same way? Or
They all have been really different and awesome in their own ways. But I think, the job on Curiosity was kind of incredible personally and, life-changing to land on Mars. But the job itself was also one of my favorites. So I was in charge of making sure that the flight ground interface held together. And that's mostly the communication system, which for Mars missions, they have two modes of communication. They can talk directly to Earth, but at lower rates, or they can relay their data through the Mars orbiters that are orbiting Mars that then send the data back. And that allows us to get more data faster back to Earth. And so it was an incredibly complex system. And I really like to test things because I'm naturally good at breaking them. And so it just works out that it's a good fit for me. And so I really liked those tests because they were so complex. And so, every time that something would break, it's like, digging in this vast ocean of options for the treasure of the smoking gun that, you know, is causing the problem. And so, you know, I really liked how much I had to learn about a lot of different things, and I really like working with people. And so there was a wide variety of team members there. So that was really fun for me. And that's kind of where I learned how much I like kind of the build and test phase of our missions, because it is always surprising what doesn't work. But then the other job that I really enjoyed, and this is where you get more of the mother in me, was the first job that I had on Perseverance. I was the manager for the test bed. So basically, for every rover we build that goes to Mars, we build another one that stays here on the ground, and we use that to develop the rover that we're building, as well as operate it later on and run our tests on it. And so that job was actually really special for me because I was able to build a team myself. And so a lot of what, you know, Perseverance's landing was for me was, you know, on top of sharing it with my kids, I got to share it with that team of young people that I was able to help bring into JPL, and that, you know, kind of came in with this, oh my God, this is going to be awesome kind of energy, and you know, show them the ropes and get them oriented into how to be an awesome engineer at JPL, and then watch them experience the landing for the first time. And that was really special, just being able to kind of build that team from the ground up and share those moments with them.
That's awesome. The cool thing I thought you said was like it was a good job for you because you're good at breaking things, and you kind of have to piece through and figure out what happened out of this, you know, big jumble of situations. And just yesterday, I think Elon Musk's Starship, the SN10, landed, which was awesome. And then 10 minutes later, it blew up, and they were like, "What happened?" And they had their little, I think it's the Boston Dynamics robot dog go out and kind of look at it with the camera and everything. And I'm just thinking, there's this crumpled up, soda can of a rocket out there, and they got to figure out what went wrong like after it landed. So I just think that's really cool, and it's kind of funny because it just kind of made me think of that. But
Yeah.
so now we've had all our hats on, but now it's all about Psyche, and
Mhm.
so Psyche 16, I want to say, the
Yes.
asteroid is probably, well, it is probably the most famous asteroid that people like to talk about because there's a bunch of myths about it and stuff. But
Mhm.
maybe besides Bennu, because Osiris Rex was just there and it's about to pull back some space dust for us. But could you tell us a little about with the mission with Psyche and what they're trying to do and what you're doing specifically?
Sure. So the Psyche mission, which is going to Psyche, it's a little hard to say it eloquently, um, is really about kind of understanding potentially, well, what Psyche is made of. And I think the leading theory is that it is a planetary core, and, you know, made of metal. And you know, we really don't know very much about how planets form and what that core looks like. And it's something that we on Earth can't really explore our own planetary core because we can't really drill to that center to be able to understand it. And so by going to Psyche, we're hopefully going to understand more about planetary formation, as well as you know, learning things that might apply here to Earth. So it's pretty exciting to get to go and see what's there. You know, the thing I love most about space exploration in the first place is that there is so much to learn, and there is just still so much that we don't know, that we'll never run out of questions. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I come up with questions all the time, and I find people like you to help me answer them. So that's my whole life really, is just asking these questions and everything. But that's awesome. Yeah, I think Psyche, they said like if we land there, it will be the first time we've landed on a supposedly metallic surface, because we've landed on Mars and the moon, and those have been made of like stone and kind of you know smaller rocks, I guess. I don't really know exactly what to call it, but
Yeah.
the metallic surface. So I always thought that was cool. And people say like, if we took Psyche and brought it back, everyone would be a trillionaire. And that's like kind of a myth. Like some people say it's true, some people say it's not true. And so it's definitely a very interesting, it's an interesting thing. And it's very cool. And we've talked about Psyche before on the show.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. The economists love to theorize what would happen if that much wealth showed up, but not this time. That's not what our Psyche is about. Our mission is really about the science and about understanding more about the planetary bodies. So we'll pave the way and we'll go there, and then we'll wait for commercial space to see if they want to try and make some money off of it.
Yeah, there you go. Now, the classic question I like to ask here is, how did you get interested in space besides its wonderfulness and obviousness? Like, where was the beginning?
Well, so I was lucky enough to grow up in Central Florida. And so, I think you mentioned the shuttle launches. You grew up pretty spoiled in Central Florida if you have a space interest at all, because your class will take a break and we literally just walk outside and see the rocket launch, right? And I have these images of the shuttle, launching over at kind of in the nighttime, and I can watch the reflection go across my pool. And I mean, it was totally inspiring to kind of be part of that space culture that Central Florida has. So that part was really great. But then I had another influence that really kind of got me into space, which was my grandmother. And so my grandmother was the world's most awesome human, in my humble opinion. She was a World War II pilot. So she was part of the Women Air Force Service Pilots, the WASP program, back in World War II. And so I was just so lucky to have that influence in my life. She, on top of being, my best friend kind of person, she was, she just garnered so much respect and so much awe whenever people found out what she did and how kind of brave she was to break through a lot of the boundaries back then. And flying in and of itself, flying planes is scary enough, and there she was flying planes, and also doing it in a world that really didn't think women should be doing that. And so she was an incredible inspiration. And as I was growing up and kind of getting into my more formative years, where I was trying to decide what I wanted to do with my life, she did all the right moves and would take me to a bunch of these women in aviation conferences, and I got to meet astronauts. And she got me a VIP viewing of one of the shuttle launches with Eileen Collins, who I believe was the first female pilot of the shuttle program. And so I was really spoiled, and that was great because it combined that influence with kind of my natural tendency to not want to get bored. And so I was like, oh, space, we'll never be done asking questions about space, I can't possibly get bored. Really just formed that direction for me. And so I knew I wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, no wonder. I mean, my gosh, that's amazing. Talk about spoiled. I mean, I thought I was spoiled. I got to see a shuttle launch in Florida, being a Maryland boy, and I got to see, my mother took us to the National Air and Space Museum in DC and the one in Chantilly. I mean, we went there a lot, and I was thinking, man, I've got it. And I still believe that, but that's awesome. That's so cool. Grandmother sounds really cool. And another thing, this is kind of a coincidence, but we're talking during Women's History Month.
Mm-hmm.
That's very cool. We kind of highlight her a little bit, highlight you, and I love it. It's fantastic. We even got to talk about Eileen Collins there. That's amazing.
Yeah, there you go.
We really hit all our points there. Really proud of us.
Great.
Now, one cool thing that you told me about that you did was you flew in a KC-135. And now I didn't know what that was before we spoke, but then we kind of talked about it, and it's a really cool thing. You want to explain a little bit?
Sure. So the KC-135 is fondly known as the Vomit Comet. And it's a NASA aircraft that flies in parabolas. And as it's flying in those parabolas, you're able to experience different gravitational effects. So they do moon gravity, they do Mars gravity, and then they do no gravity. And so it's used, to train the astronauts first and foremost, but also for a lot of experiments. It's the closest we can get on Earth to being in space. And so they NASA offered, I think they still offer it, a program for students to design experiments and be able to fly them on the Vomit Comet. And I went to MIT, and MIT, I think a few years before I was there, had a class where their class project got to fly, and that was just awesome. And so it was very well known across my major that this was an opportunity. My good friend and kind of partner in my major, we both decided we want to do that. Like, we're not going to leave MIT until we've done that. And so we decided we combine our senior project that we had to do anyway with proposing an experiment to fly on the KC-135. And we had a lot of great mentors in the faculty there who had been part of the program before. And we actually worked with JPL to design an experiment that was a predecessor to what eventually became solar sails. So we were testing different materials in zero gravity to see how they deployed and trying to learn stuff about that. So that was an awesome opportunity, and I'm really glad that we kind of were determined in our early years to take advantage of this really cool program that NASA had. And it was not what I expected it to be in terms of zero gravity. I was expecting it to be like a roller coaster, where you kind of have butterflies all over the place, and it's very fast paced, wind in your face, although obviously it was an enclosed airplane. And it wasn't like that at all. It was peaceful. And it, I can't really describe how it felt because it was so surprising to me. But it was awesome. And I think we had, I don't know, probably a dozen different parabolas or so that we were flying. And, each one was really awesome to experience. And so I highly recommend it for all the students out there that work a little harder on your senior project, and see if you can get it accepted into this program because it was a once in a lifetime experience and really valuable.
I'll let my college know that I think that my senior thesis on the beginnings of the commercial space industry, I need to write a little bit in zero gravity just to make sure that it'll be the same. I think it'll be better if I write in zero gravity, and so maybe I'll get to go that way. But that's awesome. Yeah, I would expect that it would be pretty scary. I was kind of thinking, it kind of does the parabolas and everything, and I was thinking about the Virgin Galactic's, Spaceship 1, Spaceship 2 that drops from the plane and then fires off and everything. And I was like, man, that's going to be terrifying when I do that. I'm saying when I do that because I'm doing it no matter what.
Yes,
even if I'm like 50, and by that time it's like, buying a small car, then even if it's then, I will do it, but I'm sure it'll be terrifying.
It won't be.
Oh,
you'll be surprised.
I hope not. My sister, she's like, what do you mean you're signing up to get in a rocket? Like, what if something goes wrong? And I'm like, I hope you think that I'm brave for trying to go to space. And she's like, I think you're stupid. I'm like, come on. Like, this is,
man.
We have to go to space. So, but I thought that was fun.
Yeah. Pro tip, if you get the opportunity, take the nausea medicine.
Nice.
Good idea.
Good. Keep that in mind. Awesome. Ooh. So you've kind of been all over the place. You were in Florida, and then I believe you went to USC. Is that correct?
I did, but I was already working at JPL. So I went from Florida to MIT in Boston. And then from there I came out to JPL and I did my graduate work at USC while I was working.
Nice. You're a real underachiever. That's all I'm getting from you. Um, yeah. So, man, the world of space, as you've kind of joined it and everything, has changed a lot. So we've kind of gone from the shuttle era, which kind of ended kind of around the Curiosity rover when that landed around
Mhm.
2012, and now we've kind of moved into the commercial space age, also with the Artemis program. So as space opens up for more and more customers and more companies with so many different things going on and competing, do you think the role of NASA and the role of JPL will change?
You know, not fundamentally. And so, I'm fully supportive of all the commercial space work that is being done. I think it's awesome. And, I think as we move closer to humans, returning to the moon or going to Mars and all of those things, um, I think JPL will still be primarily about robotic deep space exploration. And given that it will likely take my entire lifetime before we see humans on Mars, going to the next planet is going to take yet another lifetime. So I think that when we get to the stage where humans can be on Mars, JPL might be building the rovers that they drive, or little robotic assistants like the robo dog you were talking about for the SpaceX accident, or perhaps we'll be moving on and we'll have robots on Saturn instead. So that's kind of, I think, where JPL's charter is, and we really like to do one of a kind missions, and so I think that is in our culture, and I think there will always be a need to keep going and to keep exploring new frontiers, no matter what happens in the commercial world.
Awesome. Yeah. And, you're talking about, robots on Saturn and everything. Saturn and the moons and Jupiter and the moons is probably my favorite part about space right now. Like about
Mhm.
like the physical parts of space and everything, like Titan and Europa. Those are probably my faves. And I think, didn't you wrote a little something about the Cassini-Huygens mission? Is that correct? That was a little while ago. I remember we talked about that, but
Yeah, it was definitely many years ago. So I was lucky enough to start my career at JPL, as part of the Cassini-Huygens mission to Saturn and Titan. Um, and that in and of itself was incredible, to graduate college and then just tell people, oh yeah, we're gonna be at Saturn next year. That's what I do. And so that was really, really cool. And I think I wrote a couple of papers about my different jobs. The first job I had was about a year or so away from Saturn orbit insertion, and we were trying to figure out exactly how we were going to turn all the hopes and dreams of the science team into reality. And it was a lot of working with them to figure out how to prioritize, how to actually plan the observations, and kind of divide up this limited time that we had to explore the Saturnian system. And so that was way more complicated than it sounds. I learned a lot about the different cultures of science and engineering. Those scientists were passionate about every second that they were going to get, in every flyby of the different moons, and of Saturn, and through the rings, and all the different things that Cassini did. So they were really passionate. And then the people who built the spacecraft back in the late 90s were equally as passionate about keeping the spacecraft safe. So there's a lot of yin and yang that we had to work to try to determine what was really safe, and what would actually achieve the goals of the scientists. So that was my first job. And then I transitioned onto the sequencing team, and sequences are really all the commands that actually get sent to the computer at Saturn, and tell Cassini where to turn and when to take pictures and all of those types of things. And so that was kind of an incredible job as well, especially for someone who's fairly fresh out of school. So we got to the point where we could actually command from home, because we would command at all hours of the day, just depending on when the opportunity was to talk to Cassini. And so I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna, wake up from my bed here in Venice Beach, California, and, call someone and tell them to send the sequence that I built to Cassini. So I'm just gonna command from my bedroom. And so now I think that's probably almost normal in our COVID era, but
before it was
20
cool.
years ago, that was a pretty cool priprivilege
That was really
to
cool.
be able to do that. So being part of that team was really, really impactful for me, not just from really learning what JPL culture is all about in terms of the scientists and the engineers, but also just from being able to watch science happen, and nobody ever knew much about Enceladus, and we didn't know very much about Titan, and being able to be in the room and watch the scientists as they're seeing the pictures of the plumes of Enceladus come back, where it was just life-changing, and just a really, really, really awesome experience.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's so great. I love the Huygens probe going into the atmosphere of Titan. I believe that's fantastic. I can't wait till we're all boating through the methane um, pools on Titan, the methane ponds or whatever they got going.
Mhm.
That'll happen in my lifetime. I'm sure we'll be
It
there.
might,
It might. I'm hoping.
yeah.
Yeah, but we'll see. So I'm not even going to ask you the why should or do you believe space exploration is important? You've already answered that question. An absolute no from you. Uh,
Yeah, totally.
but I will ask you, so why should people care about space exploration? Why should people watch Perseverance, and why is the Cassini and important, why should people care?
Um, you know, we need to be able to really try to understand what the evolution of Earth is going to look like. And a lot of that can be answered by exploring the solar system. And so I think that, that's kind of the big picture question that we're trying to understand is, are there other systems out there that could have life? What do those look like? Was there life within our solar system, and what happened to it? And all of those questions can help us here on Earth determine what we need to do to either take care of our Earth, to start to be able to have habitats on other planets or other planetary bodies, or just in space. So there's just so many things that, as a humanity, I think we need to expand our horizons and to understand what our options are and what we should do. And I think space exploration really helps us answer those questions.
Yeah, nice. I mean, I totally agree. Obviously, I think it's important. I think that question of I think that's always the hardest question for me to answer when someone who doesn't really care about space that much, they ask me, they're like, why should I care? Or why should we go to space when we have like problems here on Earth? And I think it's a valid question. And I think, it's important for me to try to pull together all the opinions that I can to try to be able to answer that when that comes around. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that is a common thing. And as I've been reading, never read the comments, but I read some of the comments on some of the CNN posts and Perseverance. And there was a lot of that, oh, why did we do this? That's a lot of money we could have spent on Earth. But if you really look at the actual dollars that it costs, and you don't talk about it in one big chunk, and you look at it as a percentage of the tax dollars, it's really minuscule compared to some of the other budget line items. So there's that, but then there's also, understanding that as we're answering these questions about the solar system, we are also answering questions about Earth and trying to be able to fix the big picture problems like climate change and those types of things. So, I think it's hard for a person who feels like the government could do more for them at that minute to think about the government also having to be strategic about the questions that it answers. But I think that those things are equally as important. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think also the one that I think is forgotten is just like the pure inspiration that comes from these types of things. Like we just it's something as humans that I think is fantastic, but in like the case of perseverance, like going to the moon, like it's just something that Americans also can like get behind together. Like we did that. Like that's pretty cool. So I think that part's really important. And it makes us shoot high. It makes people like you know, do these things and it's important. And I think that's awesome. So
Yeah.
personally,
Lucky we had the privilege of talking to President Biden yesterday. He talked to the perseverance team in the control room, and that was a lot of what he said as well, is just how many young people we were able to inspire, and so it's awesome to have the privilege to do that.
yeah, and I think we I'm at my little internship for the Air and Space Museum, but I was helping funnel questions from the Twitter page, and there was just a bunch of classrooms of students like sending in questions about like there were thousands and thousands and thousands of questions about Perseverance and what it's doing, like how big it is, what are the wheels and everything, how's it going to land, and like that's why it's important. I think because the more people you get interested in this, like they're going to be smart people. Like the interest in this like drives that um, ingenuity.
Mhm.
But I think it's gonna, that's to me is why it's important. But we got these people who are saying, why are we doing this? And I don't think it's gonna change with this. But the question is, are you excited about the Mars and the moon missions? And I think people have the same reaction to Perseverance as they do with going back to the moon and going to Mars. But are you personally excited about like the future exploration, maybe human exploration of those two bodies in space?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the selfish reasons that I wanted to fly in the Vomit Comet was because I was like, okay, this is, at least as close as I can get to going to space myself. And, if we're able to kind of make getting out into outer space or going to the moon or Mars more accessible, not just for astronauts who are going to answer science questions, but for anyone who happens to have the money, which hopefully it'll get down to the price of an airline ticket sometime in my lifetime. I'm counting on that because I still want to go to space.
If
And
it's something, Jennifer, we're setting up a GoFundMe. We're getting you there. Okay.
thank you.
We're
Yes,
doing it.
I've told my kids that when they go, I'm going to be in their luggage. So that's my current plan. But I really want to be able to experience outer space and just to see the stars. I mean, it's got to be incredible, and to look back on Earth, oh my goodness. It's definitely the stuff that dreams are made of, and my dreams are still there. And so because I think the time and opportunity for me to be an astronaut definitely has passed, and so I'm pretty happy with my career at JPL, so not looking to make any changes there. Commercial space is really what I've got left to hope for. And so, I think that, people on the moon and, maybe living there or setting up manufacturing stations to be able to go and explore, all the planets is going to be just awesome. It's going to make our opportunities and what we can do and what we can explore and what we learn just so much more. So I'm
Yeah,
all for it.
that's great. My mother, my father asks her all the time. She's like, you know, well, I asked my mom, I'm like, would you go to Mars if you could? And she's like, yes, of course. And knowing my dad's like right next to her, and he's like, yeah, I know she'd go. Like she would leave. We've had like 20, 30 years together. Like she knows what it's all about. She'd be the first 10 people to go there. And she's like, oh yeah, I'm prepared to die there. I'm like, okay, all right, that's interesting. But you know what? I love the intensity. It's great.
Yeah.
Now, Jennifer, we've gotten through all the scary questions. Now it's all about having fun. I mean, the whole thing has been so much fun. But my first classic question is, if you could go to one place, moons, planets, stars, black holes, where would you go in space?
So, uh, obviously, I have a little bit of a bias to Saturn. I mean, it's beautiful.
Hmm.
And just for, again, the pure beauty of it
Yeah.
is enough to make me want to go there. And I've also always loved the Horsehead Nebula. And it's just kind of been that random thing where, the colors and the pictures and the intensity were really just inspiring to me. And so I think if I had to choose, if I get on a spaceship that can go anywhere, one of those two is going to be my destination.
Nice. I like it. Both new. Haven't heard either one before. I've said the moons of Saturn, but I've never said Saturn, so I like it.
Mm.
All right. The next wonderful question revolves around something you weren't so sure about when we talked, but now you say you have an answer. So,
Okay.
your favorite science fiction book, or your favorite book at all, and why?
So this is the question where I'm probably going to disappoint all your listeners, and they're all going to be shaking their head like, where did he find this girl? But I am not a science fiction fan. And I really have, I started JPL and I had never watched an episode of Star Trek. And to join the team of engineers that I was working with, oh, it was sacrilege. They were like, who is she and why is she here? They were the people at the Vegas conventions in their Star Trek gear. So it was definitely a new experience for me to be part of that team. And yeah, it's definitely still a bit of a cultural schism at JPL. There's definitely the diehard science fiction fans, which is great. I'm super happy to hear people, watch episodes of Star Trek and, decide that's where I want to be and dream big. And now we're, making a lot of that a reality. So that's great. I was always more into more historical accounts of space exploration. So, things like Hidden Figures and The Right Stuff about astronauts. I really wanted to know about people's lives. And I think that has actually been, a really powerful motivator for me. I had my grandmother, but there were also people that I saw working at JPL, and I was like, oh, maybe I could do that one day. And same thing when you read about the astronauts. I needed to know that these people doing, these incredible things were just as human as I was. And I think that helped me really stay focused and never let go of my dreams. And I hope that any of your listeners who still have written me off because I'm not a science fiction fan still hear the message that I'm just a girl who grew up in Florida who focused and worked hard and had big dreams and was able to make it happen. And you could be too.
That's awesome. See, no, we've had this is an interesting thing because I've had a lot of people on, and now I'm starting to get like a pretty good sample size of intelligent people working in the space industry and who watches or listens or reads science fiction and who doesn't, and it's kind of split. So, I'm a Star Trek man. My brothers and sister, we watched The Next Generation like over break, and it was fantastic. It's probably the best show I've ever watched. So I am partial. But yeah, I do, just as you read about those astronauts and everything, like a lot of my background is history. So I like tried to learn all about the different astronauts and everything. And, it's kind of endless. You can kind of go forever, like learning about these people. And obviously this podcast is more about learning about the people and kind of what they do, but really how you got to where you are and try to show young people that they can do that too. And, you're just a girl from Florida. That's you're underplaying yourself a little bit there. Okay. Pretty impressive, but that's a great message. So now I personally think that science fiction plays a certain important role in inspiring people. And you definitely alluded to that too. And you talk a little about Star Trek and how we're starting to make some of those things happen. And like Star Trek takes a look at what the future would look like back then. And now we kind of have a new understanding. And so my next question is, where do you think human beings will be in 100 years in space? Like, what will be going on the moon? What's going to be going on Earth, well, on Earth and the Mars? And are we going to be on Saturn? Like, what you think?
Yeah. It's hard to estimate 100 years. I think I have the goal to see humans on Mars before the end of my life, and also to see commercial space, because that's my jam, right? I want to go to space, and they need to make it happen for me. And I've only got another 40, 50 years left, so that's the timeline they need to meet in order to make my dreams come true. So twice that, I definitely think that we'll probably have a hub on the moon, whether it's bringing resources from outer space back to Earth, or whether it's starting to to either bring robotic missions or bring humans, or both, kind of to some of the outer planets. The hardest part about getting to space is really getting off of Earth. And so being able to use the moon, or to use other planetary bodies as kind of that new launch space, I think opens up a lot of opportunities for further exploration that we can't do because we are truly limited by gravity here. And so I think that in 100 years we'll be there. We might see it in my lifetime, we might not. But yeah, I think we'll be there. And I think we'll also have the ability for humans to just live in space. We've had people in the space station, and I think 100 days or so is about or 1 year, I think, is about the longest they've gone. But I think that we'll be able to have more habitats like that, that help us kind of create these clusters of space bases, more or less, to be able to do our exploration.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I hope that comes true. I want a nice vacation to the moon. I'm not sure about living to the end of my days on Mars, but like, how about like a week on the moon? Jump around, hit a couple golf balls in honor of Alan B. Shepard. That's what I'm all about. But Jennifer, this has been so fantastic, and I wish we had more time. Um, but we've come to the end, and we've thank you so much for being on our show. Do you have any ending words of wisdom for anyone?
um Keep the dreams alive. Don't lose sight of any big questions that you want to ask. And know that in your lifetime, if you focus on it, you can open up the opportunities to be able to explore them. And so dream big, go big. It's going to be, the world is your oyster. So I think a lot of people can really make a huge impact on humanity through space exploration.
Yeah, sounding like MJ right there. Love it. Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on the show. I mean, we're definitely reaching back out to you. We need more of your wisdom, more of your experience. So great to have you. Everybody who's listening, follow us on Instagram at Space Chams. We got plenty of fantastic guests just like Jennifer coming on, teaching you about the ways to live and about space exploration. Thanks for listening, everybody. Remember to keep looking up.